What up, everybody? This is my 200th video that I'm going to be putting out, and for it, I decided it is going to be a Joushi rambling video. There were a couple of very interesting suggestions that we had in my Discord recently about what this should be. Some people were talking about whether or not I'm supposed to make a tier list of people in my Discord, or rate other guard players, and whether or not I could beat them in a physical fight. It would probably not be very good. For quick context, I'm 5'8", which I think is about 172 centimeters. I think. Um, I did used to have a blue belt in judo, but that was a long time ago. And as you can tell, I am not the largest person in the world, so I don't think I could beat up very many other guard players in the community. But a couple of them I could probably take. But anyway, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some ongoing discussions that I keep seeing pop up in the guard community and the 40k community, and just give some thoughts on them because this is my channel. I get to talk about what I want. Anyway, so one of the big things that I think we consistently see, that I see a lot pop up on mostly Reddit, but also a little bit of Discord, is a lot of people going in and talking about how they wish more and more of the guard codex was usable. And I think I've always found this to be a very odd thing to talk about. One, because unlike most of you who are watching this, and partly for your benefit, I go through and I will at least look at every single list that was taken to a GT every single week. I won't necessarily you know, put a lot of thought into every list that I see, but I will at least take a look at every single list that was played in a singles GT. And it does give me some idea. I do track certain data sheets as to how well they're doing. I remember saying not that long ago. Let's see, that I said nature is healing. The indirect win rate is going down again, because the indirect win rate on this patch is once again below 40%. It was just under 50%. When Grizzled first came out, and then it's not quite as low as it was before Grizzled came out, but it is still, it's still pretty low overall. But anyway, there's a lot of discussion about I feel like every list looks the same at the top level, and I feel like everyone has to play the exact same list, and it's that it's just not true, right? I think one of the big things that I always think about when people are talking about this is they see the lists that are winning tournaments, right? And I do think that if you're trying to win tournaments, the data sheet pool that you have access to is a lot lower than the one that if you want to go do reasonably well in a game of 40k or even at a tournament. And to be entirely honest, one of the big things, there's a couple of things that go into this. One, if you are trying to win a GT, so 5-round event with, generally 20 something players or more, but realistically a lot of people are looking to get in the 50s or low hundreds. If you're trying to win something like that, you do have to bring a relatively optimized list. However, to be entirely frank, most of the people who are watching this, most of the people in the community, most people in general are not capable of doing that, at least not at their current skill level. And instead, a lot of people should be optimizing, one, to be bringing lists that they are going to have fun with, and two, ideally lists that they could win more games than they lose with. I think most players, without a ton of work, with a moderate amount of work, could get themselves to a spot where they are going to win more games in tournaments than they lose, especially at the GT level. And one of the big things that I always see about this is people say, oh, I want to be able to play indirect and win more games than I lose. I want to play the Luminous Executioner and win more games than I lose. I want to play my Super Heavy and win more games than I lose. And the honest truth is, you can. Every single one of these data sheets I have watched people do well with. Now, there are some versions of the list where it's if you're going to be playing 3 artillery teams and 3 field arms batteries and 3 Catachan mortars and 3 Cadian mortars, you're probably not going to win a lot of games with that, right? You just don't have the damage, you don't have the board control to do anything. But most data sheets are frankly good enough. It is there's honestly a bunch of data sheets that show up in lists that are going 4-1 at major events or winning events, and I just go, wow, that really shouldn't be doing it. I think a great example is Jonas Sinclair, fairly fairly consistently is going X and 1, 5 and 0 with lists that include the Lemur's commander. And I think that data sheet is terrible. I think it's awful. But he can do it, right? And I think a lot of the lists that he's bringing are not good lists. They aren't the list that you generally think of as like, oh, this is the cookie cutter guard list. Um, every now and then you'll see other things like the Primaris Psyker or Armored Sentinels. Like Danny Evison was taking an Armored Sentinel for a little while, and he was going like 4-1 at the UKTC majors. And I was like, I honestly think that this data sheet is a liability at the highest levels. But if you're realistically, if you're playing 1935 points of an optimized list, and then you have an Armored Sentinel in the list, the rest of the list is good enough that you're still going to be able to have a lot of success. Um, you don't see super heavies going like X and 1 that often, but it does happen from time to time. You will see them pop up. And we're consistently seeing that like almost every, not almost every, a significant portion of the data sheets in the Guard Codex are being played, right? Just going through, so things that have like don't immediately come to mind as things I've seen go like X and 1 are better at a big event on this patch. Like I don't think I've seen a Catachan Command Squad. Dreer sucks, right? Unfortunately, that data sheet is just bad. Minister and Priest is bad. Like you don't see that. I have seen the Primaris Psyker. I have seen an Engine Seer. I've seen the Torox Prime do it. I haven't seen the Aegis Defense Line. So let's see. So that is Catachan, Minister and Priest, Dreer, Aegis Defense Line. I'm gonna put all the super heavies kind of in one category because they're basically just like the same thing with different war gear. Um, I've seen the Basilisk do it. I haven't seen the Death Strike. Hellhammer, or that's again super heavy. Hellhound has done it. I don't think I've seen the Hydra do it this data slate. I've seen the Demolisher do it. The Eradicator has not done it. I don't think the Punisher has done it. Manticore has definitely not done it. Quillons have done it. The Valkyrie hasn't done it, and the Wyvern hasn't done it. So like we have like 70 data sheets, and like 12 of them have not been in like in a list that has done very well at a GT, right? Like I don't know like what more we can really ask for. Basically everything, almost everything is pretty good. There's like in terms of things that are like beloved that just like are not being played, it's like the Manticore. Like if you want to play a Basilisk, people are doing it. It's actually having success over in Spain. I don't know why it's having success in Spain, but it is. Um, I don't know. Like there are other things that like the Aquilons. I think Aquilons are like one of the coolest models in the guard range. I think they look fantastic, but they're just kind of okay. But again, like if you're trying to win more games than you lose, in even in competitive environment, you can do that with the Aquilons. If you want to do that with like your buddies in like a local play group or whatever, Aquilons are plenty good, right? I guarantee you're not losing because you're taking Aquilons. Um, but to kind of like loop back into this a little bit, one of the other big things that I've heard as kind of a gripe about the 40k comedian meta is this is particularly something that I've been hearing from people who've been playing 40k for a long time. And they lament the death of creativity. Or like you will say is like, oh, you're playing a certain detachment, I know the entire list. And to a certain degree, like this is kind of true, but there's a lot of differentiation that I think people are one ignoring and two is kind of inevitable. So let's talk about the part that where they're ignoring it, right? I recently put out a video about Doombolt Guard, and Doombolt Guard is there's a couple different variations of it, but I think it's one of the strongest singles archetypes you can play. It's gotten a little bit harder to play in the Defiler world, but like it's still very, very good. Um, and there are two primary variants of it, and it's actually kind of fun for me to track like one how often people are playing them, and two which variant they're playing. Because there's the one that I recommended with two Dorns, and then there's the one that Gustavo has been playing quite a bit with only one Dorn and a unit of 15 Silence on foot. And these two archetypes are really like they have a lot of units in common, but they play fairly differently, right? There's a lot of like subtleties to understanding the way that you have to play these different styles of lists, and they also are different depending on like what kind of boards you're playing on. And I think part of it is for sure like the UKTC tournament format where they play the same 5 missions every time. does in fact lead to a situation where you're going to be playing the same armies because the like the things surrounding them have not changed, right? If you want to play a certain archetype because it's like, oh, I need to be able to move 11 inches on this turn, so I need to be able to play units that can do that, and I need to be able to shoot 24 inches down this firing lane. I need to be able to play units that can do that, and that's just how it works. Like, ask your TOs for more variety in the missions that they present. But I think but there's also like at least 5 major archetypes that you can play in guard right now that are seeing maybe not widespread but fairly common success, and they are Doombolt, right? And that's combining the one Dorn and the two Dorn Doombolt. So there's at least 2 variations of Doombolt that are pretty popular. And there's also like the Purcell variant where you just have the extra 30 of Scions and you trade like some of the battle line for an extra Chimera. So there's 2 popular and 1 slightly less popular variant of Doombolt. There's 2 Dorn, 12 Bulgrin, which are still seeing play, or 2 Dorn and at least 12 Bulgrin. Like sometimes you see 18. There's 2 Dorns and Vanquishers, which is again like these are very distinct styles of playing guard. There's Recon, right, which is its own thing, and you could argue there's variance in that, but like realistically, they don't matter that much until you're playing at a very high level. Um, then there's like traditional tanks and midboard, which is like you can do it. It's most commonly with Dorns, but you can also do it with like Lord Solar and Dorn battle tanks, or you can do it with just like a bunch of Russes. Like this is still very playable. Um, there's Pile of Tanks that we recently saw. So like Nick Gigello was playing this Hammer of the Emperor for a long time. He still kind of plays it, and then David Gaylor took something very similar to Battle for Salvation recently over in I think it's like New York. So like there's at least 5 variants of guard that you can play to a level that is going to potentially win you a GT, right? It's common. There are different ways to do it, and this is true for a lot of different armies. But the other part that I kind of want to talk about is it's kind of inevitable, right? One of the major things that we've seen, not just in 40K, but across like competitive gaming in general over the past couple of decades, is the communities have grown quite a bit, right? And with that, as the community grows, there's a couple of things that happen. One, you just get more people who are trying out more things. So weird interactions are going to be discovered faster now than they were before, right? If you had 100 people just testing different things in a faction before, now there's 1,000. So they're going to be found like 10 times faster, right? You're going to find all of the interactions that you maybe would have overlooked on your own, but someone else in the community is going to find them. But the other really big part of this is you're going to get more people like me, right? And one of the big things that I do, right, is I put out the weekly meta update. I will go through and look at all the lists, and I will show you guys what are the lists that are doing well, who did well, what did they play against. There's a lot more detail that we could potentially go into, and um, I think I have a link in most of the descriptions for like more information if you want to go look them up on Best Coast pairings or like figure out who these players are, where they're playing against. And it's honestly not that hard to find a lot of them if you're willing to just go look on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Like you can find a lot of these guys. Um, so there's more information being disseminated. It's easier to find this information, right? If I remember when I was playing in like 5th edition, if you wanted to find like tournament results, you would go to the Daka forums, right? And you would see like if you wanted to know who did well, like hopefully they posted their list and hopefully they gave you a battle report to talk about like what it is they played against, how they played against it, and all that kind of stuff. Nowadays, you go to Best Coast Pairings, or you can go to my YouTube channel, or you can go to half a dozen other YouTube channels. You can go to Reddit. You can see like, oh, what's doing well. You can go to Stat Check and be like, oh, what is happening here? What's the matchup between these two armies look like? What's the win percentage between these two? Now, what if I change it to the top half of players versus the top half of players? Does that change anything? Right? This information is way, way easier to come across than it used to be. And I think the other major thing about it is whenever I hear this kind of thing, there's a really, really good video essay that I'm going to look up on my other monitor, who it's by. It is by folding ideas, and it's called Why It's Rude to Suck at Warcraft. And it's an hour and a half video essay where they kind of go over the change and the fact that everything in Warcraft is quantified. Right? I was having a conversation with one of my buddies. He's a pretty good Warcraft player, and they have a really good like system in the game where you put like a program that sits on top of your World of Warcraft, and you can track like, hey, this guy, the DPS that they're putting out with this class is in the 90th percentile, right? He's better than 90% of players. He's doing more damage than 90%. But the other guy in our guild is only doing better than 70% of players, right? And it creates like this hierarchy within the gaming community of, oh, the guy who's doing 90% is clearly the better player, right? And that information and why it is, and because it is so easy to find, creates a situation where it is so easy to optimize. It's so easy to find this information. And when you have that information, it is really easy to point to, right? I come from a game mostly from League of Legends, where that was the thing that I was focused on really, really heavily for like a decade or more of my life. And it's really straightforward to go look at like, hey, the character you're playing, this is what the professionals are building on that character, right? And then there's also like, okay, so the professionals are building this, but what are people building in solo queue at all different levels? Oh, they're a little bit different. Why are they a little bit different? But just like going and looking and just saying, hey, the data says that you should be doing XYZ. The data says that we should do this. Deviating from that becomes questionable, right? You need to be able to prove that you can do better than the average percentage for a certain number of players or what the overall community is doing. And I think a lot of people who've been playing 40K for a long time in particular are missing that feeling of creativity. But it's a mix of like that drive to find something new, right? Versus the fact that it's only new because people were not optimizing, right? Like older editions of 40K were so convoluted and there was so much of a luck element and so much of a randomness factor to them that you couldn't. It's not that you couldn't optimize, it's that it was harder to tell what was actually optimized because, sometimes you would roll an attack and you would shoot yourself, right? Like that just doesn't exist in the modern edition of 40K. And one of the things that we're kind of looking at what's going to be happening in 11th is this problem is going to become solved so quickly, right? 11th edition is going to be solved, or at least like the initial version was probably going to be solved in like 2 months, right? You're going to see a huge collapse of all the different possibility space of like, what if I take this detachment and this detachment and put them in these units and use them in these combinations, and people will be like, well, we have tried that, it doesn't work very well, right? But this is the kind of thing where if you're playing smaller games, where if you wanted to go play War Machine, or the new StarCraft is probably a fantastic example of this. The new StarCraft tabletop game is a game that it's new. So if you wanted to go try and find things for yourself, you could very well be the first person to try and play them. But because the community is also small right now, because it doesn't have these like data sites, these stat sites they can go look at them, it is hard to find that information. It's going to be harder to find whether or not what you're doing is good or whether or not what you're doing has been tried before. And so it ends up becoming a situation where the game will have some of that creative feeling to it, but because because 40K has gotten larger, it's kind of disappeared. You really need to try a lot harder in order to try and find these things. And one of the interesting things that I kind of want to point to is it's not dead. It really isn't dead. It's just harder to do. And one of the recent examples of an event that happened was an event called Rosehammer. And let's see if I can, yeah, Rosehammer 4. a player named Harry who did a fantastic podcast with Tyler Bertel and Lucas Troller over on StatCheck. I think it's called Take All Comers. Uh, they had a conversation with him about all the games that they played. And Harry was playing Salamander's Bastion Task Force, where he was playing 40 tactical marines. Not intercessors, not JPIs, not Primaris marines. These are like the old tactical marines that you could get in 5th edition that almost everybody else will look at and be like, this army sucks, right? This army, it's 40 tactical marines, 2 units of 5 devastators, 3 predators, a scout squad, 10 terminator, 10 assault terminators, a captain, a librarian, terminator armor, and Vulcan from the Salamanders, right? And he won a GT with this against an event that had like at least three like Team USA players or Team USA adjacent people on that event. I think he personally beat 2 of them. I think he individually beat 2 of them. Like Team USA players, like these are very strong players. You can still do this. This works. But I think a lot of people are also like kind of get back to this. And sorry, this is rambling. This is a Joushi rambling video. One of the other big things that I think people are losing the thread on is you can absolutely like optimize a list, right? If you just copy paste the list that I put in my most recent video, or my video about Doom Bolt Guard rather, and you just copied that and took it to your next event, you might do well, you might not do well. You need to understand the game, right? And a lot of the times, one of the reasons why there's so much discussion about lists in 40K is because it is something where we can, go and look and be like, hey, so and so was playing this, right? Joushi was playing this. Nassim Fouché and Wesley St. Hines, David Gaylor, they were playing this thing, right? It must be good. And if you were playing something that's different from that, it's probably worse. And like part of that argument is like, yes, if you're playing something that is similar to what, one of these top players are playing, but you change something, odds are it's worse. Odds are you did make the list less effective. However, right, one of the things that I talked about in my Doombolt video as well is the list that I think is the strongest version of that local list. There's 3 battle line users. There's a unit of 20 Cadians. There's a unit of 10 Krieg, for sure. And then the third one, you can take a unit of 10 Krieg, which I think is the stronger version, but you can also take a unit of 10 Cadians, which is what I actually recommend to most players because it's easier to play, right? There's fewer failure points. You don't have to think as much about screening because you just have 10 Cadians who are hanging out in your backfield basically the entire game. And the decisions that you make with that list are going to be very impactful on your win rate, right? Earlier today, I was going through all of the different, I was looking at every list, right? And I saw at least, I remember 3, like, exact copies of my list. And most of them were going like 2-3, 3-2, somewhere in there. They were going like about in the middle. And the list is good enough to win an event. I've done it, right? I've taken it to multiple teams events? I took it to several teams events, and I went like, I think I went 9 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, or something and like my only losses were against very, very strong players. So like the list is good enough, right? It's not the issue with the list, but it's probably issues with like what you're doing on the board, right? Maybe you don't understand how to screen. Maybe you don't understand what target you're supposed to go kill with Kazurkin, whatever it is. But it's really easy to like show this to like another player on Discord or Reddit, and it is not possible to distill all the information of what you did in the game as to like what was wrong. And you can even say certain things like, oh, I was trying to do XYZ, and my Kazurkin went out and they didn't kill 5 Scout Marines. And you're like, okay, well, that sucks. Like, sometimes that happens. It's a dice game. But the other part of that is some people will be like, oh, what you're supposed to do instead is you're supposed to remove the Kazurkin from the list and take, I don't know, Krieg Heavy Flamers instead. And it's like, sure, you could do that. It would make the list weaker, honestly, but like, it's not going to be like that much of a difference overall. If you did it, I'd be like, sure, it's not why you're winning or losing games. You're probably doing something else different elsewhere on the board that is more impactful than this. But the list is easy to point to. The list is easy to be like, you changed XYZ. You did not do the thing that the top player said you're supposed to do. And I think that's part of why we see like so much condensation of lists around certain archetypes, which is interesting. Kind of inevitable. Kind of inevitable, though. I guarantee that as Warhammer gets larger over the next couple of years, I expect that 11th edition will see similar growth in the community as we saw in 10th edition. Um, this problem will get worse, right? It'll become more extreme than it currently is. And it's not possible to change that if you are part of the larger community. You can only ever change that by being part of a more niche community, right? Whether this means that you're going to go play like it's probably true in Horse Heresy actually. Like you can probably go and just play like certain things because the game is just not as well developed, or the game does not have as large of a community, and the community does not care to the same degree about what is strong as the 40k community does. You can do this in StarCraft, War Machine, maybe. I don't know how big War Machine is actually. I know there's like Conquest, some historical games like Old World, Sigmar, Conflict 47. I don't know. Like you could do this in like all kinds of games. Unfortunately, it's just like not really true in Warhammer if you would be part of the community at large. Anyway, I don't really think that's a problem. I also think if you want to play like your cute units, your cute data sheets, like the things you think are cool, and take them to a tournament, do it. It's not why you're losing. To be honest, you're not losing because you took a Basilisk. You're not losing because you played, um, 40. You're not losing because you took 60 Kriegers, right? Like that. That's not why. It's not why you're losing. Um, so yeah, and that's okay. Um, I'm really excited about 11th edition in general. I'm actually really excited for the return of a bit more narrative to the game, a bit more, you know, we've been very towards the end of chess, and if D&D's over here, I think we've been like here, and I want to be like here. I think I want to be a little bit closer to Dungeons and Dragons than we were before, and I think that new stuff is going to be pretty good. Anyway, I don't really have a whole lot more to say about this. Again, if you're interested, oh, last couple things. If you haven't seen it, I really, really recommend going to check out Why It's Rude to Suck at Warcraft by Folding Ideas. Other really important things, like while I'm on the topic of like other stuff in the gaming space, um, go read I think it's called Who is the Beatdown? Who is the Beatdown? Yeah, Who is the Beatdown? Star City Games. It's an article from 1999 written about Magic the Gathering, but it is one of the most important articles in gaming history ever. Um, I'd also, if somebody can find the old Wobbles blog post where he talks about like finding local maxima, and getting better and improving at stuff, I think that's also a really good one. But I tried to look for it a couple of days ago and I couldn't find it. So if somebody could link that in the comments, I would really appreciate it. Or somebody send it to me in Discord. But anyway, yeah, this is my 200th video. Go us. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys all next time. Bye bye.